Please be seated. Don't you just love these Old Testament readings that talk about stoning people to death and dogs licking up their blood and all that kind of stuff? It kind of makes you glad to be here and wakes you up on a Sunday morning. But it's part of our story. As part of my morning routine, shortly after the alarm clock goes off, sometimes the first time, I turn on the television. And I turn it on to the local news. I do that. I don't do it on the weekends. But most days, that's what I do. And it goes back to a time in my life when I really wanted to know what was going on and the hard news that had developed. This was a time that predated when breaking news was used to introduce any story, when usually that was reserved for the times when they actually interrupted a program to bring news. So there are things that, as I've continued to do this, have really changed, and that's one of them. One of them is that it seems that every news story is sensationalized. It's somehow made more attractive and more appealing and more magnetic to try to draw us in. And so that something that's breaking news may have been happening 3 or 4 days. The other development that's happened during this time that really bothers me, apparently it doesn't bother me enough that I stop watching it in the morning, is the way in which we've elevated rumor and gossip and speculation to be news. Think about how much each newscast, be it on television or radio or even in print, how much of that is a reporter interviewing a reporter about what someone may have said. Or, better yet, what someone may have done. How much time is spent, not just there, but on the internet or wherever you go, speculating about what a particular celebrity has done, or, God forbid, a politician, because we know they don't ever do anything. But the way in which this has been elevated to a level of serious consideration and presented as such, and it really bothers me. I think that's a shift that has taken place in terms of the media. But let's not fool ourselves that this is something new. Gossip, innuendo, and rumors were the initial part of the development of language, I'm convinced. At any point when we began to communicate as a species, it was probably because someone knew something about someone else and they wanted to whisper and talk about it. I just can't believe it's otherwise. And if not, that was one of the first things that began to happen. People began to talk about in public what others may be up to, or what they thought they might be up to, or what they would just like to stir the pot and say that they are up to. It was certainly a situation during Jesus' time. In Luke's story today, we hear how Jesus has been invited to lunch at Simon the Pharisee's house, going for Sunday dinner. So it's a nice, easy, sort of wonderful event. And as they get there, lo and behold, Simon turns around and hears a strange woman in his house. Now, Jesus is probably already reclining, getting ready for dinner. And here's this woman who he has not invited to his house. And I think he's rightfully shocked that she's shown up there. After all, she is not his guest. But more than that, he turns around and she has come in and she's been behind Jesus and now she's moved in front of him. And she's crying. She's crying. And she's kissing him. She's kissing his feet. Now, she shouldn't have ought to done that. That's not what a respectable woman would have done. She would not have shown up in Simon's house on the first part, but she certainly would not have shown such emotion and would never have touched his feet. But she did. And as she cried, she began to use her tears to wash his feet. And then she took down her hair. No respectable woman would do that. And she took her hair and she dried his feet. She shouldn't have ought to have done that either. Simon knows that. Simon is aware of that. He knows the mores of the time, and he's aware of that, and he thinks if this guy were truly a prophet, he would know just what kind of woman she is. And Jesus apparently is enough of a prophet to know what Simon is thinking. And he says to him, Simon, let me tell you a story. I find it very interesting in this story that we don't really know her sin. Luke never tells us. He never mentions it. It's historically, it has been assumed that it was a sexual sin. Probably prostitution is often what is attached to her. But then, you know, that's one of the first things we will attach to a sinful woman, isn't it? That's one of the places we will go first. And that's one of the things we will assume. And that's one of the places where we will start our gossip and our rumors. But apparently what she has done is public enough that Simon knows what it's about. But where the hope lies in this story, and I think it is absolutely beautiful, is that no matter how notorious her sins, she comes to Jesus and is forgiven. She comes to Jesus and is forgiven. What a wonderful story for you and me. Oh, there are those sins that you and I have publicly confessed. There are those sins that we have had publicly confessed about us. But you and I also probably hold, at least I hope you do, within ourselves those private things, those things that we want no one else to know. No one else to know. They're the ones that we have dreams about and nightmares about. They're the ones that on those times when we have our difficulties, we remember and they make things worse. We seem unable to let them go. It's those sins that Jesus forgave her. I have to tell you, I hate this story. It's one of the ones that I love to hate. I love what happens with this woman. I love how she responds to Jesus. I love how out of gratitude she gives of herself to show them. But I have to tell you, I hate Simon. I hate Simon because Simon is the one who knows the gossip. He's the one who tells the gossip, and he's the one who's arrogant enough to assume that it's not about him. You see, that's the juxtaposition in this story. On the one hand, you've got this woman who knows it's about her, and on the other side, Simon knows it's about her too. But yet Jesus' story reminds him that it is not about her. It's about him. And that the one who does not get forgiveness is the one who cannot admit his own role in sin. You know, that would be like you and me showing up here on Sunday morning. And that we replace in our confession I and me with you and them. That somehow we come together to confess for other people because that's where our hope is. It's in somebody else changing. Or perhaps that's where the hope of the world is. If only someone else can do better, then all of this will be fine. If only someone else can see just how wrong they are and admit how wrong they are, then they can be all better. And the world will be fine. I hate Simon because Simon is me. He's me. Throughout his ministry, Jesus gives us various options to make choices. Follow me, don't follow me. Learn from me, don't learn from me. Do this, don't do this. This story offers us a choice. We can be Simon, or we can be this sinful woman who gets forgiveness from Jesus. What do we choose?